I wanted to be the best painter in the world, working figuratively. And I worked figuratively for about 12 years, but became restless in terms of what I wanted to do. And I began to search. The issue of making visible is what making art is about. You make things visible, your love, your hates, your wishes, your dreams. That's the making visible that artists make. What you choose to make visible and how you choose to make visible then sets you on a journey. At a certain point, two things happened. One, I met a man named Charlie Pridgeon here in Philadelphia. Now, most of the artists that spoke today know of Charlie. Charlie introduced me to a way of thinking that was new and exciting and was restless and was searching. The second thing that happened is I went to Korea. I was drafted in the Army right after I finished the academy. It shows you how old I am because the draft doesn't exist anymore. And in it I saw a funeral that was amazing to me. I saw a funeral. Now funerals that we know of, everyone is dressed in dark colors and black. In Korea, the actual wagon that carried the body was highly colored. It was difficult for me to understand that because my dad was a minister. And I didn't understand why there was this wonderful sense of color that had to do with an end, seemingly, but understanding the philosophy at the time, it's a transition. Therefore, there's no reason not to be excited, happy, and to explode with a sense of wonderful joy. The next thing was, I read a book. As I was trying to make this transition, I read a book. And it was a book by Kandinsky, Point, Line to Plane. And there was something that he said in the book that has been inspirational to me ever since. He gave an example. A boy goes to the store and buys a loaf of bread, period. Period signifies end, finish, done. If you change the placement of the period, you have a dilemma. The dilemma is if you use the period in its usual way, the sentence doesn't make any sense whatsoever. However, if you change the meaning of the period, there are many possibilities that can happen. Now, most of us have seen that happen with a dot in our lifetime. Can you think of what that could possibly be? I'll tell you, .com. Dot no longer means end, it means a continuation. Process starts for me by first trying to identify a language that I can understand. Language itself becomes exciting. Why? Because you have 26 letters. And out of that 26 letters, you can make an infinite number of words. Why? Because you can combine and recombine them and give different sounds. The sense of element for me, point, line, plane, shape, value, color, is much the same. I can combine and recombine them in ways that will produce, for me, new images each time. So the process begins for me like so. Every painting for me starts with a question. Question leads to search. You've got to search the answer. Search brings about discovery. Discovery hastens invention, and invention answers the question that you first put out there. Consequently, the painting itself begins to grow and begins to develop. I am from Philadelphia, therefore I saw graffiti. I was struck by graffiti. I drove into Philadelphia on one occasion, and I drove past a house that was tinned up. At the time I was living in Virginia, it was tinned up. But what was on the building and on the pieces of tin were pieces of handbills, some that had been taken and thrown away, some that had been hit by weather. On this particular occasion, I saw a young kid walk up and make a mark. It struck me. Where did he decide to put the mark? Why did he decide to put it there? One of the things that seemed to come to me from that is the sense of organization that was on the wall caused a choice to be made. For me, I am interested in the human condition. Therefore, if I talk to myself, honestly, I can talk to you. Art is not a private experience. But if I talk about things that are the human issues for me, I can talk to every person in this room. It doesn't matter. You don't have to like it. That's not what I'm saying to you. I'm saying that art is about the human condition always, no matter what form it particularly takes. This particular work is a combination of oil paint, oil stick, encaustic, which is wax. And I'm interested in the one thing that we all know, even though I don't do it, landscape is something that we all see every day. The relationship between how buildings and trees reach the sky is profound. I am interested in why that happens, because it talks about different kinds of space. I'm interested in a limited space. I'm also interested in a distant space. How do I do that? How do I find myself moving in that direction? Two ways. One, I study perspective. And if I were to ask you, what is perspective? Most of you would say to me, it's a series of lines and points that indicate space. I would say not at its center, it's not. At its center, it is comparison, mainly comparison. You find a way to compare something that's very large with something that's very small. And I said to myself, why can't I do that abstractly? Of course I can. I can use that vehicle in perspective that I learned as a realistic painter. And I can use it abstractly. Sitting down one day, listening to Charlie Parker, and he was playing, and he was moving in ways that if you got caught in that particular section of the music, didn't make sense. However, what then began to happen is somewhere down the line, it snapped into place, and I asked myself why. And the reason is he could do anything he wanted to do musically as long as he resolved it at the end of the passage. I said, I can do any damn thing I want to do with color and line and shape as long as I take the responsibility and resolve the relationship between the parts. So all of that, for me, allows me to take chances. Making art is about chance taking. Anytime you are afraid of taking a step on a painting, it's done. It's over. It's dead. There have been times, and I'm just shaking my head, there have been times when I have done a commission that's very, very large, and I put something in that was absolutely wrong, that covered a good portion of the painting. I took it all out and started again to make it what I wanted it to be. I want what I want when I'm painting. I don't feel the need to compromise. If I want that, that's what I want. If it doesn't work, I will find a way of removing that which doesn't work and, in fact, putting that which is important. I worked for 12 years as a realistic painter. I take certain things from that. The checkerboard for me comes from my love of Vermeer. I think Vermeer is a magnificent painter. But you will find on the floor of his works always that which approximates a checkerboard, which I tend to think is about optimism. Optimism for me is what nurtures me and makes me want to paint. Music becomes important. People are enormously important because basically people are what makes all of us work. A smile can change all sorts of things. Working with color, so people ask me, how do you get the color that you want? They claim that color is not transparent when you build up a certain amount of paint. That's not true. Light can penetrate anything. How do I get some of the colors that I want? If I want a red, I will paint underneath that a purple, an orange, and then a red. And I promise you, what happens is light penetrates each one of those, hits the white reflective surface, and bounces back out. And I tell you, the color that comes out is not what you think it's going to be. It becomes powerful and strong and saturated. So for me, music, color, life, and the inside. My grandmother said to me, and this is the last thing that I will say to you, I was saying to her once, something made me happy and I felt joy. And she said, what do you know about joy, son? And I said, well, Grandma, it makes me happy. She said, this is what joy is. Joy is a deep down, inside knowing. She was born in 1866 and she died in 1968. She was 102. That sense of understanding in terms of joy is what motivates my painting. I want people to smile when they see my work and feel joy, not the sense of, oh, I'm so happy. I want you to know more about yourself when you look at the painting. I take that from Beethoven. Beethoven, on all of his music, wrote this, and it means to the glory of God. I believe that. I have no problem with that. I believe that the creative process is a spiritual endeavor. I don't mean church. It is a spiritual endeavor. So for me, that's what it means. It is a praise. That's what, for me, making art it happens to be. I will put something down that has absolutely no meaning whatsoever, and then look at it. And it begins to suggest. One of the things that happens, and my wife goes crazy, because if a painting is not working for me and I can't deal with it, or a drawing, I put it on the ceiling, in the bedroom, or on the front wall, so that when I wake up, the first thing I see is that work, and I tell you, every time that happens, I can resolve a painting from that point on.